Right then, what's going on, everyone, and welcome back to the Development Blueprint. Today's lecture two. I feel like this is going to come out second. Lecture two. So it's going to delve a bit more into the physical physical development side of things. So the foundations of muscle growth and the physiology and mechanics behind hypertrophy. So hypertrophy, I say that because I see it so much, but hypertrophy if you're in the UK. Hypertrophy. Hypertrophy rolls off a tongue nicer, but it is in fact hypertrophy. So growth is stress recovery, then into adaptation. Hopefully adaptation. Anyway, if you're doing things right, you should get some adaptation. So yeah, this is gonna delve into that really. So it's gonna set the base for all sort of physique training, pretty much, whether that's fat loss, muscle gain, all of this, every avenue, performance, everything will relate to these slides. It's general muscle growth foundations. So it's not really too specific, but it's just a bit about everything, pretty much everything to do with physical adaptation. So it's going to be a cool one. So before you can optimize splits, exercises, diets, nutrition, you need to understand what actually makes muscle tissue adapt. So hypertrophy, what is it? It's a biological process that happens, like it says on the screen. Growth is, so hypertrophy is stress, so a stimulus, recovery from that stimulus, and then adaptation off the back of that. So an adaptation cycle. Every variable in training is just a method of influencing that cycle. So all these different training styles, all these different nutritional styles or different diets, all they do, they're all just different methods of influencing this cycle. So this is always a cycle that occurs. There's just different ways to go about it. So um, next, yeah. So what's the purpose of this lecture? So first of all, define how muscle grows. So define what hypertrophy is, and break it down into its sort of physiological components. Understand the different hypertrophic mechanisms. So what actually does cause hypertrophy, and what it is. Because in order to do something and do something well, you should understand what it actually is. So that's what we're going to get into, and then establish the relevant training principles. So without this foundation, pretty much everything else is just random. Everything's random guesswork unless you actually know what's going on. So first of all, we have the different mechanisms of hypertrophy. So what are they, first of all? So the first one we have is mechanical tension. Now, well, it can be broken down into three main mechanisms: mechanical tension, metabolic stress, and muscle damage. They are the three that are conducive to being big, pretty much. Mechanical tension being the first one, being the buzzword, being the one you hear everyone talk about, because with good reason, it is the direct force applied to the fibers, pretty much. This is the main driver. It's the real sort of growth factor. It's how much mechanical tension you're putting through your fibers under stretch, under load. So yeah, that's what it is. It's basically the direct force that is applied to the fibers under a stretch, and this is the main driver, the main growth signal. Next, we have metabolic stress. Now, I want to preface this: mechanical tension is the single most important one, but there are others. Okay, there is metabolic stress and there is muscle damage that do contribute a certain level, but mechanical tension is the main driver. So that's what we focus on. So metabolic stress is basically like the pump, the burn you get. It's just an accumulation of different metabolites that marginally do increase cellular signaling. So growth signaling, they do increase that, but at a far lesser level than mechanical tension does. Then you have muscle damage, which is just like little tears, microscopic tearing that forces the body to just rebuild stronger fibers. Now, a lot of people think that that's the main one, how sore you are, how much you're damaging the muscle. It doesn't really work like that. Doesn't really work like that. But what do you need to do to cause muscle damage? You need to apply tension. See what I mean? Mechanical tension. What you need to do to increase metabolic stress? You need to apply tension. So they both pretty much stem from how much mechanical tension you put in through a muscle. So yeah, tension is pretty much the base signal that everything else depends on, pretty much. So we have different muscle fiber types as well. So this is pretty much common knowledge these days. So we have three main different muscle fiber types. Type 1, which is more slow endurance based. If you'd imagine a marathon runner, they have a lot of type 1 fibers. Like, you're genetically predisposed to a certain level of different types of fibers as well, just from birth. So that's why some people are better at longer distance, some people are better at more explosive sports, because you have a genetic predisposition to a certain number of fibers in each muscle. Now, everyone's different. It's a total individual thing. There is no way to, well, you could probably have like a muscle biopsy to actually see how many types of fibers you have. But I think that's a little bit extreme. So we're just going to say that we're never truly going to know what fibers we are made up of 100%. But it's a good bet, though we're fairly balanced, mixed between all of them. But some people will have more type 1, some people have more type 2. So slow endurance fibers, type 1. So higher rep range work. So it's basically like, imagine you do a set of 12. The first 6 reps of that 12 rep set will be predominantly type 1 fibers, just because you're not putting out much energy production. Yeah, they're still good reps, but they're not really putting out much energy. They're more endurance based and they're very fatigue resistant as well. So type 2A are then mixed fibers. They're kind of like a hybrid between type 1 and type 2B. I don't know why that says type 2X. That should be type 2B. Sorry, everyone. I've fucked the PowerPoint. And I've now got demonetized as well. Great stuff. So, yeah. Type 2 are like a hybrid sort of mix between type 1A and type 2B. They are fast, but still moderately fatigue resistant as well. So you still have plenty in the tank there. So think of, like, again, of a 12 rep set, rep 8 to 10, really, of type 2A is a good bet, moderate reps. Then type 2B are the explosive fibers. Okay, these are the ones that are, when you're training in close proximity to failure, these are the ones that are getting bought in. These are the ones that are coming into play. So then if you do a really good set of 12, close to failure, 2 to 0 RIR, you're going to get every different type of fiber in there. So that's why varying rep ranging in your training is a good idea, just to make sure you're ticking every fiber box pretty much. But yeah, heavy loads or close proximity to failure. So for example, it says heavy loads, yes. So like a 3 rep deadlift will be predominantly type 2B, but any set that's taken close to failure and has a good level of intensity will also bring those fibers in as well. So a complete physique recruits all of them pretty much and develops all of them. That's why using a variance of rep ranges is very important, and your different loading styles do matter as well. So to be very, very anal about it and to be perfect, you'll train across a varied rep range. So multi-unit recruitment. We have the Henman size principle. First of all, now you're saying, what is that? What is that? So it's basically just a study that was completed that says how your body recruits motor units, which is pretty cool because it's very, very conducive to hypertrophy. So a bit all that says is it starts with small, slow motor unit recruitment. Then it recruits larger units, more powerful ones as demand increases, a bit what we talked about in the previous slide. As you get closer proximity to failure, you get more and more multi-unit recruitment. All of these points we pretty much say why training fucking hard is important, because the harder you train, the closer you get to failure, the more multi-units you recruit, and the more of the faster twitch fibers you recruit as well. So yeah, it starts with small. Then as your set goes on, more multi-units will be recruited, and they recruit larger, more powerful ones as well as demand gets heavier. This means to fully stimulate every fiber, you must train close enough to failure to force the nervous system to engage to those like high threshold units. I like the term high threshold, but like just the bigger units that are recruited when you get close proximity to failure. So full fiber activation pretty much occurs near failure. So again, everything is pointing towards training fucking hard. Now, you really don't need to look at any of this in that much detail. It's just telling you pretty much train hard. But if you are like me, you like to know why are you doing things. Why is the general consensus that you must train hard and close to failure? Yes, it's fun, but why are you actually doing that? This is why. Exactly. This is so education. Education is everything. So progressive overload, another buzzword in the industry. What is it? It is a gradual, measurable increase in stimulus. So as you go through the growth cycle of stress, recovery, adaptation, that stress initially at the start, so the stimulus your body will eventually get used to that. So then it's no longer causing an adaptation. It's not a high enough level of stress to warrant an adaptation anymore. This is why we then progressive overload. So we make sure we're doing a little bit more every single time. Manipulating load, reps, even tempo and intensity. I don't know why that says density. Two typos, wow. Intensity. So yeah, manipulating load. So add in half a kilo every week. When you get to the top of your desired rep range, add a 2.5. Fall back down the rep range a bit, and then increase in reps back up to the top of the rep range. Your tempo can improve. If you're taking a 2 second eccentric versus just bombing it at the bottom, that is progressive overload. You've increased your stress, your stimulus. And then intensity, so training harder. You can also increase your levels of intensity. So all of these things are progressively overloading. I would say technique is, but that would kind of come into tempo, but range of motion as well. If you're progressively increasing your range of motion, which in the start of a phase you may be, if you're new to sort of training properly, you will, and that is progressive overload. Even though because you're increasing your range of motion, you'll ultimately be doing less weight for less reps. You are still progressively overloaded the stress on the muscle. You've progressively overloaded the level of mechanical tension because you're using more range of motion. So that is still progressively overloading, even though the load or weight or reps has regressed. So yeah, you must gradually increase the stress over time, whether that by load, reps, tempo, and intensity, or control even, but overload must be recoverable. So you cannot bite off more than you can chew, because then you just get fucked up. And that's a quick way to end whatever phase you're in a bit short, is by being under recovered. It's a good teller to know if you're under recovered if you cannot progressively overload. If you are no longer able to progressively overload, you are either very, very advanced, or you come into the end of your phase, or you're just under recovered and you're doing too much. Okay, so you're doing too much. But overload must be recoverable. Growth only continues when the body has chance to recover and then cause an adaptation to each new stimulus you apply before the next one arrives. So you cannot give your body a new stressor, a higher level of stimulus, until it has already recovered and adapted from the previous one. This is why we don't increase load every week. Reps, yes, we aim to, but if you're deep in an off season, you're deep in a growing phase, you're in a good groove with all your exercises, and the only thing is adding weight and reps to the bar. There's no change to technique, there's no change to food, there's no change to body weight, really. It won't come every week. You won't be able to put a rep on your set every week when you're at that ceiling. Okay, now you will initially at the start of a phase, especially if you have new exercises, because it is true that you neurologically adapt to different exercises as well. Your body becomes better at doing those exercises. It becomes better at those movement patterns. Exercise is a skill, and different exercises are skill based. You will neurologically be better at those exercises as time commences. So that is also progressive overload as well, but it's not purely the reps and loads. You might see your reps and weight flying up and you're like, fuck, this is mad. That will die off. Yeah, if that continued, you'd be the strongest man in the world in precisely 18 months. So it's not really true. That doesn't happen, pretty much. So it does eventually slow down. But that being said, you do still try and aim for it every week, because if you go in there already accepting that it's not going to happen, it's already not going to happen. But if you go in there expecting it to happen and actually trying for it to happen, it might, but then it might not. But that's fine. You tried. But if you already go in there with that negative mindset of, yeah, it's not going to happen, and peak off season, I'm not going to add a fucking rep this week, I'm scared of doing this weight, I'm terrified before I go in and do this set, I'm not going to progress. If you go in there thinking like that, you're not going to progress. But then if you go in there on the more positive side, and then you've done progress, it's like, okay, fair enough. But then you still have the chance to progress. So yeah, recover before advancing as well, pretty much. You need to recover before you can add stimulus. Okay, so volume versus intensity, the great debate. So what are they first? So volume is pretty much your total workload. Intensity is how hard each set pushes the system. They trade off. Okay, high intensity means you need lower total volume, but higher volume, arguably, you need lower total intensity. Now, I would err on the side of higher intensity, slightly lower volume, if you can train accurately. Now, you'll see some of these top level guys who train fucking hard. They train so hard. They'll do 2 sets max on most things. Why is that? well, most of my clients as well, because we preface training fucking hard. If you're training hard and you're training accurately, you don't need a lot of volume. You just don't need a lot of volume. And if you're obviously a natural athlete, you just simply won't be able to recover from excess volume at that same level of intensity. So it's you need to find your sort of balance for, if you're training consistently very hard, you might need a little bit less volume. If you're not a bit newer, but if you're very, very new to the gym, you're not able to take sets all the way to where they need to be, because, like we said, training is a neurological adaptation as well, and training hard is a skill in itself, regardless of what exercise you're doing. You're not used to putting your body through that amount of stress and those CNS levels of stress, so you need to maybe add in a bit more volume, to account for the lack of accuracy or the lack of intensity in smaller sets. So you might need a bit more volume there. But if you're training very, very hard, you simply cannot use that much volume. That's why the whole thing of top set, back off, two work sets, three work sets is a thing, and that is the most popular way to train in people that train very, very well. Because if you're training hard, you're training accurately, you just simply cannot do a whole load of volume, because you either get burnt out or you're not progressing. Or if you're coming round to like your fifth, sixth set of a chest press, and you've done 3-4 sets of good quality work, those last two sets are fluff. Yeah, they're not going to be any conducive to hypertrophy. You're burnt out at that point. There's no point doing it. All you're doing is racking up your fatigue meter, which is going to lead to you deloading sooner, which is going to lead to you losing gains. Not losing gains, but not making the most gains you could be. So you need to find the optimal middle ground, pretty much. So the key is balance, enough volume to create the signal, but not so much that you cannot recover or progress. The only way to sort of find that out is, look at your training first. Are you training as hard as you possibly can? Yeah, you are. Okay, are you training as accurately as you possibly can? Most times the answer is no. But if the answer is yes to both of those questions, and you are recovering perfectly fine, then you can add a set in here, add a set in there, add a set in there, add a set in there, especially if you're in the off season, and you can see what you can do, see where you recover, push the boat out. You do a bit too much, okay, fuck, that's my limit, that's my ceiling, I'm not doing that again. Okay, fine, don't do it again. But it's important you know where that sort of middle ground is. So basically, you need enough volume to create enough signal, enough growth signal, but then not enough that you can't recover and progress and ultimately adapt. Okay, so recovery as a limiter. Training doesn't just build muscle as well. We've talked about excess. We need to be recovered, but like I know it's like the buzzword in the industry is like, oh, fatigue. You don't want too much fatigue. You don't want too much fatigue. It is fine to be fatigued. Okay, it's fine to be fatigued. It's totally normal. Okay, you're training fucking hard. You're trying to build your physique. You're gonna get fatigued. It's hard. If it was easy, everyone would do it, but they don't. So there's a fine line between being fatigued, okay, but excess fatigue is when, say, for example, you train push pull legs. If that first push day you're smashing yourself, okay, and then by the time, say you train push on a Tuesday, Wednesday, yeah, you're feeling a bit sore. Thursday, you're feeling a bit sore. Friday is still a bit sore. Saturday, you got push. Saturday morning, you wake up. Nah, not so anymore. Sound. Good. Green light. Go and train push again. You know where you're at. But if you're still coming round and you got pushed that day now and you're feeling your chest and you flex your pec and it's like, shit, I'm a bit fucking sore. Bit excess. You've bit off more than you can chew. Dial it back in a bit. You should not be going into the next rotation of that same muscle group still carrying fatigue and soreness. What's going to happen if you do that? You're going to get fucking injured. You're going to not create enough adaptation because you're not allowing yourself enough time to recover. And yeah, it's just a bad play in general. And you will ultimately cause stagnation because you're not going to be able to progress. So you're not going to be able to increase that stimulus. And then you're sort of breaking the cycle then because there's no increase in stress. There's not enough recovery. And then ultimately there's not enough adaptation. So it's quite backwards in the fact of, do more, grow more. No, that's not how it works, actually. Sometimes less is more. Because if you're allowing more time for recovery, you're allowing more time for adaptation. What's adaptation? Bigger fucking muscles. You need to say more. Next, your hormonal environment. Now, if you're a natty, there's pretty much fuck all you can do about any of these things. You just got to you've got to work with what you've been given by God. There's small things you can do to improve your hormonal environment, but there's not a whole lot, really. So it's still good to know, though. So muscle growth operates under hormonal regulation. So testosterone, growth hormone, IGF-1, and insulin. Now, what do these things do? They all promote protein synthesis. So how much adaptation is occurring, pretty much. So the higher levels of these things, insulin specifically, is extremely anabolic. Why is insulin anabolic, and why is being insulin sensitive being anabolic? This is why you see bodybuilders check their fasted blood glucose. Insulin is basically the body's transporter of glucose. So it transports the nutrients into the muscle in the recovery phase of the cycle, which then helps cause adaptation. Your muscle needs nutrients and needs the relevant nutrients in the cell, in the muscle, at the cell, in order to adapt and cause adaptation. So that's why all of these things are up there. So testosterone, growth hormone, IGF-1, and insulin promote protein synthesis. Cortisol and chronic stress counteract it. So they are very, very catabolic. Anabolic basically means growth. Catabolic means shrinkage. So you don't want anything in your life that's catabolic. Cortisol is so catabolic. Cortisol is stress. So if you have a stressful work life, you just need to fix that. What else increases cortisol? Poor sleep. This is why people talk so much about sleep, because if you're not sleeping, your cortisol is generally going to be elevated in general. And like we said, cortisol is extremely catabolic, which we don't want if we're trying to be big and strong and handsome and jacked. So training, nutrition, and sleep all influence these indirectly, but kind of directly as well. Like your training and your sleep and your nutrition are all things you do to get big. But if you have a good structure in those things, your hormonal balance, your hormonal environment will also get a benefit off the back of that. So basically, manage your sleep, manage your stress, and have the proper nutrition in order to maximize all these. If you're a natural, obviously you can't hack hormones with any other exogenous hormones, but you can manage your lifestyle variables to anabolic to catabolic ratio is more on the anabolic side in your favor, which is what we want for big, strong muscles and to be handsome and jacked, which is what we all want at the end of the day. So, practical framework. Now, none of this shit matters, as I just said, if you actually are not applying it. So now you know what hypertrophy is. You know you need a stimulus. And then, first of all, what is a stimulus? A stimulus is, we just talked about what is a stimulus, what is the stressor, what's the mechanism. Mechanical tension being the highest one, the most important one, the main growth factor. So that is how much stress you're putting through your muscle under stretch, under load. So that means training fucking hard. And then we have multi-unit recruitment. So how do we do that? You should be throwing your answers at me right now. I feel like I should have a fucking Kahoot quiz or something. So how do we recruit the maximum amount of multi-units? We train 0 to 2 RIR. We train hard. Because we know the type 2B fibers are not getting recruited unless, which are generically the bigger fibers, they are not getting touched. They are staying untouched unless you are training to a good level of intensity. Now, research shows training to absolute zero balls to the wall failure and 2 RIR doesn't give all that much gains for the amount of fatigue it causes. But I would always say train to failure. Why? Because a lot of people just simply are not capable of training to a true 1 to 2 RIR. In order to train to 1 to 2 RIR, you need to spend a lot of years training to absolute zero, because you need to know where that is. And then maybe when you're a bit more advanced, you're a very good trainee, you know where failure is, you know what your body can do, you know what your rep speed slowdown looks like on different exercises across muscle groups, across rep ranges. You can then judge, is that 1 RIR? Is that 2 RIR? Or is that 0 RIR? So yeah, then we need to combine compounds and isolations. So we've talked about that. Use both compounds and isolations with deliberate control, because we know more control, more multi-units, more range of motion, more mechanical tension. All of these things all are conducive to the stressor. Then track lifts and adapt weekly. So that's under the progressive overload one. We know how important progressive overload is, because we need to be consistently increasing the first layer of the cycle, which is the stressor, in order to still be getting adaptation. So you need to track your lifts. You need to make sure you're doing a bit more. Now, we've said it's not just weight or reps. It can be tempo. It can be intensity. And if you're fresh in a meso, it will be the neurological adaptation as well that comes with new exercises. So yeah, track your lifts, monitor fatigue, make small weekly adjustments. The process then compounds into long-term growth. So this is how we actually apply it to our training. This should probably say train in a variance of rep ranges as well. Hypertrophic rep range is 5 to 30. Anything lower than 5 is a bit naff. Anything higher than 30, also a bit naff. And who the fuck wants to do more than that? Not me, anyway. So yeah, somewhere in that middle ground, touch 6s, touch 7s, touch 10s, touch 12s, touch 15s, touch 20s on some smaller muscle groups if you want to. And also, like I said at the start, everyone's body is genetically composed of different amounts of fiber types in different muscles. So some people will respond better to higher rep work on certain muscles. Some people will respond better to lower rep work on different muscles. The only possible way to find that out, apart from the muscle biopsy on every muscle group, which would probably not be possible, but also would be very expensive because they're not giving that out in the NHS, is to find it out for yourself. Have a training block where you're in a slightly higher rep range on a muscle. Have a training block when you're in a slightly lower rep range on a muscle. Find out what works. Find out what you enjoy. Find out what works for you as an individual, because muscle building is so individual and you need to find out what works for you, pretty much. So, some common mistakes. Random programming. So most random programming, chasing failure without a plan, and ignoring recovery metrics, which is a massive one. It's not hardcore. It's actually catabolic as fuck. So you're not training harder, being bigger and being stronger. You're just being a twat, basically. And you're limiting what you can do by thinking you're doing more and more and more and more and more. Thinking, yeah, I'm fucking sore and I'm going to go train that same muscle group. You're not hardcore. You're just fucking staying small, and stay small then. Stay small. I don't give a fuck. So most lifters fail from not lack of effort. Even in clients, I find that not many people have a lack of effort. Everyone trains pretty hard. If you tell someone, okay, go and fucking train to failure, they're going to train hard if they have that dog in them. And I am blessed with a good set of clients that do that. So then it's about the other ones. It's not ignoring recovery metrics. It's quite weird. I'm recording this today. I had a message this morning off one of my clients. He dropped 2 reps on his back offset on the pendulum squat, and he was just generally under recovered. He's also a rugby player as well. So now what are we doing? We're looking at lowering leg volume a touch, maybe using some less taxing exercises, move into single leg stuff, move into non-axial loading stuff as well. So that means just less weight through your spine. Anything you do axial loading wise is always going to skyrocket your CNS fatigue. So squat, deadlift, hip hinge, any squat pattern, leg press to an extent. It's not directly axial loading. So basically, what axial loading is all your spinal erectors, everything that's being used to keep your spine tight, all those little muscles along your spine, when they are constantly turned on for an exercise, that fucks you up. And you have a ceiling to how much of that you can do in your training week before you're in the fucking bin, pretty much. So yeah, don't ignore your recovery metrics, because that is what leads to adaptation, is being recovered. It's not being sore. Being sore shows that you gave a good stimulus, but if you're staying sore, that's a problem. You're not recovering and you're not adapting off the back of that. Okay, so sleep, appetite, mood are all different recovery metrics, and these are warning signs. If they're going to shit, it's most likely you're under recovered and you're no longer building muscle. And discipline, sticking to your measurable systems and not emotionally training. Okay, so to summarize, what is hypertrophy? Hypertrophy, stimulus and recovery. Both of those are just as important as each other. I cannot stress this enough. So if you have a stimulus without recovery, you are not growing. It's that simple. You're not growing. You're just going to bury yourself pretty much. You need to be recovered. But then if you're always recovered and you're never getting sore, it's probably a telltale sign you could probably be doing a bit more. Say, for example, you're on a pull-push leg split. Okay, so pull-push legs off, upper lower off. On that Tuesday, when you've got push, you train push, yeah, good push session, nice and stimulating. Wednesday, yeah, chest is a bit sore. Thursday, It's a bit sore sometimes when I really flex it hard. Friday comes round, you got upper body again, your chest is perfectly fine, you're good to go, sound. Green light, you're at your nice amount of volume and intensity. Perfect. Continue as is. Then we have the other end of the spectrum. So you train push on Tuesday. On Wednesday, you're absolutely fucked. You cannot lift your arm up across your body. You went to touch your ear and your fucking chest. Yeah, you're fucked. Thursday comes round, exactly the same again, maybe a little bit less, but you're still extremely sore. You could not train push today. Friday comes round, upper body. You need your chest to be fine now. You know, you just it's chest day. It's chest day. International chest day. You're feeling your chest. Oh, it's a little bit sore. What's that telling us? Probably a bit under recovered. So then what do you look at? You look at your training volume. Is it a bit too high? Is it a bit excessive? But then you have to look at the other factors as well. Why else are you undercovered? Has your sleep been fine? Has your cortisol been low? Has your nutrition been in check? All of those things will play into how well you're recovered. So it's just an amalgamation of everything getting nailed. And if you're still under recovered, your volume's too high. But if you're not nailing all of these other variables, you can look at either one of them, and then it's extremely hard to pinpoint which is actually the thing that's causing you to be under recovered. Is it too much volume, or are you just being a pussy and not hitting your nutritional intakes properly? Are you not sleeping well enough? Are you doing all these other things that are going to impact your recovery? Recovery is growth, pretty much. Recovery is growth, and recovery is adaptation. Recovery is everything. So you need to be recovered. What drives adaptation? Tension. Mechanical tension drives adaptation. Forget about the others. Not forget, but lesser input on the others. Okay, mechanical tension is huge. How much stress you're putting through the muscle under a stretch. So basically, good range of motion, good intensity to recruit all the muscle fibers. We've talked about that. Why training intensity is important. Now, and I've also said 0 versus 2 RIR mitigating returns, really. But I would recommend everyone, 99% of people, to train to 0. Okay, 0 reps in reserve. You could not complete another full rep under the same execution and technique. Why? Because you need to be able to do that to then judge from there, okay, where's 1 RIR? Where's 2 RIR? You need to know your body, and to be able to stop at 1 or 2 RIR, you need to know where that 0 is. And a lot of people don't. And you need to spend a lot of years finding where that 0 is and fucking being in the shit in a set and being like, do I have another one? Yeah, fuck it. And then you get it. So people very much underestimate. If I walked into the gym right now and I said, okay, go and train to 2 RIR, 9 times out of 10, they had 5 reps in the tank. And then that is why I just wouldn't recommend RIR training for 99% of people. So yeah, and balancing volume, intensity, and rest. All of these things very, very important. So you need to find homeostasis in how much volume you can recover from, but not too little that you're not causing enough of a stressor. You want to be causing as much as possible that's recoverable. And then intensity as well. So if you're training absolute balls to the wall failure, you need less volume. If you're training intensity and accuracy is not quite up to scratch, then you can handle some more volume, and then ultimately rest. Okay, so that's pretty much everything. That's the principles of muscle building. So everything pretty much stems from all of these. So yeah, hope you enjoyed that. Share it with your friends. Most likely, 9 times out of 10, people that watch this are probably very much into their muscle building, and there's a lot more videos coming for you as an individual. But yeah, like I'm inclusive though, so there's a lot of videos coming for every avenue of development, not just physique, but this one was a lot more physique based. Okay, so yeah, that's hypertrophy as a whole. So basically, train hard, train accurately, recover like a beast, and you'll get fucking big and jacked, which is what we all want at the end of the day. I really think God put us on this planet to be big and jacked. Okay, so be big and jacked and do what I said. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.